Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, where we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey. And there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 452. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another exciting guest. Today we are continuing with the theme of balance, and I will be talking with Diane Randall about work-life balance, something that is super challenging for a lot of people and also really a great thing to achieve. So I hope you find this episode interesting and useful. I've been reflecting a lot on balance lately, which is why the last couple of episodes have been on this topic. And that's why I've invited people on the show to help me talk through a few aspects of balance. So I'm excited to introduce this week's guest, Diane Randall. She's got a great take on work-life balance, which is something, as I said, a lot of people, including myself, struggle with. I often get frustrated that I don't manage to fit all the adventures I want into my calendar, and as a result, I get unbalanced from cramming too many things into my week, month, or year. Diane has some great tips on how to live a balanced life your way, because of course there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to balance. Everyone's life is very different, and different people need different things. So how can we create a healthy balance without heading into burnout? Diane answers this question and more, and she provides super practical tips on how you can get clear today on what balance looks like for you. She has a great list of really specific questions. So, who is Diane Randall? Diane is energized, committed, and passionate about leading wellness conversations around life balance, self-care, plant-based nutrition, and whole life wellness. Her joy is when men and women adapt health and wellness methods that reduce stress and bring harmonious balance to their lives. She excels at equipping business professionals with workable wellness advice and strategies that fit their demanding lifestyle. Diane is an author, whole life consultant, college instructor, and workshop speaker and presenter whose articles have appeared in publications such as the New York Times, Balance Magazine, Choice, Consulting, The Active Times, and American Holistic Health Association. She has been a guest on numerous podcasts and has appeared on television, including a guest appearance on The Oprah Winfrey Show to talk about successful relationships. Diane hosted her own podcast, Balanced Living for Busy Professionals, to bring the best inner tools and strategies to her listeners. In addition, Diane is the founder of the Whole Life Wellness, which is an online community for busy professionals to connect, share, and explore ideas around living a healthier lifestyle. For more information about workshops, speaking appearances, and access to numerous resources, visit her website at dianerandallconsults.com. So, what are we going to talk about in this week's episode? We discuss what exactly is work-life balance. And according to Diane, it's not an exact balance like on a scale. It's something very different, and it's dynamic. We discuss how you can tell when you're off balance, the most frequent causes of work-life imbalance, the specific questions to ask to understand what balance looks like for you, how you can create more balance in your life, how knowing your values and priorities helps you to create balance, how to create a healthy balance without heading into burnout from too many adventures, my problem, and why it's so important to redefine what balance looks like for you on a regular basis, because it is dynamic. And I think this is something that's really important, and we touched on this over and over again in the episode. So, hope you find this episode interesting and useful. Here we go. Hello, Diane. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you about work-life balance.
And I am so excited to talk to you about work-life balance. It seems like it's been a lifelong journey for me.
I think it is for pretty much all of us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Diane Randall, and I call myself a whole living consultant.
Mm.
And what that means is My work is around the body, mind, and spirit, because being a whole living coach and teacher for the past 25 plus years, I learned that it's not just a physical aspect, it's not just the mental aspect or the spiritual aspect. There's a combination that makes us whole of things that we need to do. So
Absolutely.
I can go back to being a young, divorced, single mom with an awesome career,
Yeah.
trying to navigate, first of all, what it's like to be newly divorced, a single
Yeah.
mom, all of a sudden, with two children, trying to figure that out, but also trying to navigate a
Mm.
career that I really loved in
Yeah.
technology. So, what I recognized right away is that, oh my goodness, this great job is not going to sustain me.
Yeah.
I'm stressed out. I'm depressed. I mean, all these physical and mental things, weight gain, all
Mm.
these things put me in a space where my health was failing me. And then previous to that, my sister had passed away unexpectedly.
Mm. Sorry.
So keep in mind not dealing with that trauma
Yeah.
and then enjoying life and all the other things that came up. I really felt that I wasn't going to be here for my children if I didn't figure it out, because I had heart palpitations, I
Yeah.
was depressed, I was gaining weight, I
Yeah.
had no tools in what to do to balance my life. Didn't
Mm.
even know what that meant.
Yeah.
Okay. So just really taking a step back, and people always say, how did you even know to do that? I knew that I was young. And then I'm
Mm.
having all this stress. It's taking a toll on my body. And I've had enough relatives to pass away
Yeah.
to know that my body was just being overwhelmed with all the things in life that really wasn't the best for me. So even with that, I'd go to the doctor and he would say, you know what? You're going to have a stroke or a heart attack if you don't figure out
Wow.
what to do in your life. And I just took that as okay, there wasn't YouTube and all these things, lovely things we have now,
Mm.
coaches and podcasts like yours. I literally had to think about that and start just reading, listening to speakers that I like, just doing research on what does life balance mean to me? What does that even mean to me? So
Yeah.
it was figuring that part out first by doing my research and really understanding, okay, I have these kids, I have this job. What I learned quickly was I can't be everything to everybody. I needed to understand that I needed boundaries, that I needed to exercise, eat better. I learned all the things I needed to do to keep Diane Randall in the game of life.
Mm.
With all the things, all the balls that I had to keep in the air, and recognizing that, you know what, I can't do everything. I'm not a superwoman.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, I have it all. That's my definition of what that means. So yeah, it took a while, but as I learned and educated myself in what I needed to do, I just embraced myself. And then people started saying, wow, you look good. What are you
Mm.
doing? You know, and I started sharing that. I never knew that I would become a teacher, a coach. I never knew that. That wasn't my plan. It was just to get better.
Mm. And so how did your life change as a result of that? So people start saying you're looking better, you started becoming a coach and a teacher. And at what point did you realize you needed to start teaching people and helping people with this?
Well, people started asking me all the time, what are you doing?
Mm.
What are you doing? Because I even started looking at what I ate. Well, how do you even know if that's healthy or not? You
Yeah.
know, they didn't know. Okay. I just started researching and talking to teachers and people. And I even went to nutrition school
Mm.
because I
Wow.
really wanted to learn, because I was so confused with healthy foods.
Yeah.
Okay. Just that whole word, all those
Yeah.
words just confused me. I'm not saying people have to go to nutrition school, but my life became more intentional. That's the
Mhm.
word I'll
Yeah.
use. Looking at what I'm eating became intentional. even when I'm working, what does that look like? Making sure as best I can that I don't get overwhelmed with work by taking on too much. That I set my boundaries, which is key to a
Yeah.
lot of this, that I learn boundaries and teach people what I need. That was huge. That was huge.
Yeah. I think upholding those boundaries and asking for what you want it's so hard for so many of us.
It's so hard for so many of us. And I'm telling you, it was hard for me,
Yeah.
especially if it's, gosh, my boss just told me I need to do this. I mean, I'm scared, I'm
Yeah.
nervous. I can't go to him, but guess what? I turn around and ask the question, what is it costing you not to have that conversation with your boss about
Yeah.
you leaving at 5 o'clock to pick the kids up versus having someone else pick them up and going in late at night tired with a night of sleep that's not even restful,
Yeah.
and waking up stressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what was it costing me to
Mm.
do that? And just practicing small things equal to big things,
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people think that they have to make these massive changes in their life.
No,
But what we don't
no.
realize is that the little things, like tiny little tweaks, really add up.
Tiny little tweaks that you can, I call it a practice that you
Mm.
practice. And once you start practicing working that muscle,
Yes, yes.
it gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
It gets stronger and stronger. And you always do this in love and kindness. Because
Mm.
guess what else happens? If you don't look at your life balance and what that looks like for you, it turns us into people that we don't want to be.
Yeah.
So if people think they're hiding that part of them and they're just going to deal with the stress, that's such a temporary thing.
Yeah.
Because eventually, it's coming up and it's coming out in one way or another, and probably not in the best way.
Exactly.
Or we're turning it on to our boss, our manager, when it's really it's not the boss. It's me.
Yeah.
It's me not having any boundaries, not teaching people how to treat me and respect what's important to me,
Yeah.
or at least not talking about it. Because
Yeah.
people don't know. They don't know where your edges are. They have no idea.
Yeah. And especially in a workplace, most places are going to kind of push until they get some pushback. And if you're not pushing back, they might just keep going.
They may just keep going. So one little trick I learned that back when I was in the corporate America structure is, because now people want you to do more with less people, less.
Yeah.
So when I would have a lot of things on my plate, I would say, I would have a meeting with that immediate person that gave me those tasks. Okay, tell me what is my priority. Help me
Yeah.
prioritize what I have to do. That has worked beautifully.
Good. That's a really good tip.
Because if you don't let people know, again,
Yeah.
where your boundaries are, then they have no idea. They'll come and load something else on you.
Yeah.
And with COVID has really extended our day.
Yeah, absolutely.
We may be home, but we're putting in more hours. So
Yeah.
even the balance at home, I mean, I think it's more important to take breaks, to exercise, to eat, to shut that computer down, just as if you were going and coming to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is work-life balance? How do you define it?
I define it as it's really the balance of our life, whether it's work, because work and life are really the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no hard line there.
But I think in the old structure, and I'm calling it old because things are rapidly changing, work was our priority because we get up in the morning and we go to work in the past, and life was everything that was left over. And for me, it's really an integration of work activities and life activities, and finding that, examining internally and externally, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? So if I want balance in my life, what do I have to do? Because that means peace, that means happiness, that means joy. So how do I get those things that I want? And part of that is looking at work and life as one big structure. It really is. So to have that work-life balance, maybe I want to get up a little early and take a walk. and then log onto the computer or go to work? How do I incorporate these things in my life that's going to bring me joy, peace, and happiness, help me to navigate my family and all the things that I have to do at work or at home or wherever? What does that look like? It's creating that life, that wellness plan, or at least those wellness activities that you want to integrate with work.
Yeah.
And it's also conveying to others. Again, I keep saying boundaries in different ways, what that looks like, because I'm not setting a meeting at 11 o'clock because guess what? I've been sitting at my computer for 2 hours. I'm going to get up and take a 30-minute walk. So it's maybe if you're on Zoom, even if you're on site at work, it's blocking off 30 minutes or saying, you know what, I'll be back in 30 minutes and taking a walk, going and sitting somewhere quiet, closing your eyes for a second, just to renew, just to take care of yourself. So that's what I mean by putting it back, because we've all been depleted over time, most of us. So what does that even look like? I mean, over the years, people say, oh, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's no such thing if your choices don't equal your actions.
Yeah.
You're right. It's no such thing.
Yeah. So how can we tell when we're off balance? What are the signs? Because I think like we don't get out of balance from one day to the next. It's not like all of a sudden we just go from balance to chaos. It kind of creeps up on us. So how can we tell?
Well, a lot of times we don't know until we have a massive breakdown. And I remember in the past, I didn't know that I was out of balance until one day, because I used to travel a lot when I was younger. And one day, riding to the airport, the driver pulled up to the airport and I couldn't get out the car.
Ooh.
I had to go back home. And I didn't travel for like 2 months after that because I literally didn't see that coming. So it's really ignoring the signs that things are off. Irritable, because that's a sign when you're irritable.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
You're irritable, and you know how you feel inside, because when people ask us to do something we don't want to do, we feel it. We know it, but we do it anyway. So it's paying attention to those internal feelings, the energy that comes up. What am I telling myself when people ask me to do things? What am I saying about this job? And when we don't take action before things get out of hand, then that's when we have the bigger problem. So if my boss is asking me to work till 6 o'clock every day, and I know I need to be out of there at 5, but I'm doing it anyway. More and more. How do we know? Because I'm resenting this guy or this woman. I'm resenting that person. And then one day I'm literally being disrespectful by telling them how I feel about things instead of talking about it, negotiating, because it should be a win-win for everybody. But if you never say anything, it won't change. And I know we all learned how we needed to be at work from it's an old model. It was an old model. I say before COVID. Because COVID changed a lot. It made us really think about our lives and think about ourselves for a change. How many people do you know where their job is who they are?
Yeah. It's a huge part of your identity.
It is part of people's identity. So another thing for balance is, who would you be without the job? It's figuring that out as well.
Yeah.
And getting other activities into your life outside the job.
Yeah. So what are some of the most frequent causes of work-life imbalance? Like, what are the things that we kind of need to look out for?
You need to look out for, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
You need to check in with that every single day. If you're feeling sick, if you're feeling depressed, it's recognizing that something's off and maybe going to talk to someone.
Yeah.
Because the mental piece is there, even though we ignore it. It's recognizing the pain that may be in my body from sitting too much, or my back or my neck. It's really recognizing, how does my body feel? Because tight necks, sore backs, sore bottoms,
sitting in a desk chair,
sitting in a desk chair, that is a sign too.
Yeah.
And how am I? How am I showing up for not just work, but my family?
Mm.
Am I irritable? Am I yelling at my kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, what does that look like? And it's really about checking in with yourself and recognizing, how do I feel? How
Mm.
am I showing up?
And I think that can be hard for people sometimes because it's like, things aren't going well. And so you're scared to check in with how you feel because you're afraid that, like, when you look at how bad it really is, like, it's just going to be chaos.
Yes, it's going to be chaos and I'm going to have to change something. And you're absolutely right. That is the reason many people that have problems with work-life balance still are having problems, because it takes courage to look at your life. Because guess what? I may need to quit this job and find another one.
Yeah.
It's tough, but how do you have that courage to check within what's going on? It takes courage. And I'll just say it, you have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
You have to be ready in your mind, in your body, and in your spirit. Even if you don't know what to do, there is a ready state. Because if you're in a ready state, nobody's going to have to drag you or argue with you about work-life balance and what you can and cannot do. So it's, are you ready? Are you ready for the change? It's okay to be scared. I just say do it anyway, but it's really okay to be scared. Yes, you're going to have courage. You will. You may have that nervousness, but how do I do it anyway? Because inaction, nothing's going to change. Nothing, unless you take action and change it. And as we said earlier, you start with the little things. The little things.
So that leads me on to my next question. What can we do about it? Like, how do we create more balance in our lives by starting with these little things?
It's really sitting with yourself initially and really understanding, what do I want? What does it feel like to be in balance? For me, what is my definition? What is my definition? What does health look like for me? It's sitting with yourself and really visualizing it or writing it down. And sometimes when we visualize what our life could be or should be, it gives us ideas. We start to think about how we can change things. And then maybe you want to write down what the vision looks like. And then, okay, what actions can I take to support the vision that I just mapped out in my head?
So it sounds like journaling is really, really useful in this.
Journaling is very useful, because if we've never thought about having a balanced life before, it's just writing it down of what that looks like, because you want to remember, because you want to create actions and make choices to support those actions on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. New decisions, new actions. That stuff is really scary for some people.
It is scary, but do it anyway, because nothing's going to change. And if you need help, sometimes you may need some therapy to get through it first.
Yeah.
You may need to talk to some medical person about your health before you start. But it's having that visualization, writing it down, and maybe I need help with the weight thing. Maybe I need help losing weight. I want this, but I have no idea how to get started. But it's talking to the right people or like-minded people to get that support, to get that help, so that you can take, let's say if the first thing is, I want to lose weight so I can be with my kids and really navigate through life better, but I have no clue. It's getting the proper help. It's reading the right books. I'm not saying going out spending a bunch of money. You can read books. You can listen to podcasts like yours. You can look at videos on people who have meetup.com, people who have really started the journey. It's really just making yourself a priority, because that's the first thing. That I'm worth the balance.
Yeah.
Yes, I have children. Yes, to recognize that. And you're right. It's work to even get to that point.
Yeah.
Recognize it.
Yeah. That you are worth creating work-life balance, that you are worth making these changes to have a life that brings you happiness.
Yes. And you matter. You matter.
Yes.
So it's really opening yourself up to that first, I think. and giving yourself permission and loving yourself
Mm,
enough to open that door so you can hear what might be possible.
mm. So one thing you talk about is knowing your priorities and your values. So how does knowing our values and our priorities help us to create balance?
Oh, that's everything. That's like the foundation.
Mm,
That's like your core foundation. And really, what the visualization is writing down and figuring out what that is. Because everything you do from the point of knowing, setting that core foundation, everything you do in your life, you can take it back to your core
mm,
foundation. And those should match. Even your actions on a daily basis. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm going to spend 8 hours on this. You know what I mean?
mm.
It's the little tweaks and the shifts, taking note of that and measuring that up against the foundations and your core values.
Yeah. So how can people get to know what their values and priorities are? So for someone who's not used to doing the journaling or the inner work or this kind of deep inner reflection, how can they start approaching values and priorities?
Well, I would say it's taking some time and just sitting with yourself.
Hmm.
And sometimes you want to journal what's coming up, not making any changes to it, to what you're writing, but what's coming up in this moment. When I say I want a balanced life, it's examining what's coming forward, even if you don't know what's coming forward in this moment when you hear me say that.
Hmm.
And it's sitting with yourself, sitting in silence, shutting down the noise
Mm-hmm.
just for a few minutes and just really sitting with that idea of what does my life look like when it's balanced, seeing
Mm.
what comes forward.
I think
That
it's a
that's
really good question.
yeah, it's an awesome question because there's no one answer,
Yeah.
okay? And we're all different. But at the end of the day, and what I say on the other side of that is joy, it's happiness. Who would I be if I was happy? Who would I be
Mm.
if I had joy in my life? What would that look like? And sometimes it's just looking at that future person and then reversing it back
Mm-hmm.
to get the answer sometimes. Who would I be if my life was balanced? Well, I could go to the gym, I could go to
Mm.
meditation, I could do yoga. I mean, I love that question because that's when I get a lot of answers. Who would
Yeah.
you be if your life could unfold in this way? They know
Mhm.
who they're going to be at that point, right? They just
Yeah.
don't know the steps. So it's taking who would you want to be and then writing that down and then creating intention
Mm-hmm.
and action
Mm-hmm.
and choices to support that.
And it sounds like a place where a lot of experimentation can come in. Like you can try, like you said, meditation, and maybe you like it, maybe you don't. You can try going to the gym, you can try running, you can try different things and see what works for you.
I'm so happy you said that because that's it. That's it. If I listen to a speaker on YouTube or in person and they talked about work life balance, something they said deeply resonated with me. Try it out.
Hmm.
It may work or it may not, but it's trying those different things. Because here's one thing I can say after all my years in this work is one thing leads to another.
Yes. Yes.
And being curious
Mm-hmm.
and trying on different things. That is how you start. Because when I teach classes around this, people don't know, they don't have a clue.
Mm.
But I may be listening to a podcast or listening to a speaker, and they just say something that really resonated. Okay, how do I hone in on what they just said? Is it going to one of their workshops? Is it doing some research on they just said, but it's trying on different things
Mm-hmm.
to see how I feel. So maybe I try meditation. Oh, didn't like that because when I first tried yoga, I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
why? Because my monkey mind just wanted to keep busy and yoga was just in the way.
It's not fast enough.
Not fast enough. I laugh about that today, but that was true.
Yeah.
It wasn't that yoga was bad. I wasn't ready. And then I went back like 3 years later. I wasn't there yet, but
Yeah.
it's trying on different things.
Hmm. So one thing I struggle with personally, I think I'm pretty good at like adventure is a very important part of my life. It's what I talk about a lot on this podcast. So my struggle is finding the time to do all the things I want to do. And as a result, I sometimes cram my calendar full of fun things, which is great, but then I start to get overwhelmed by all the fun. And
Fun
so
things.
so how do we create a healthy balance without heading into burnout, not from work, but from the fun stuff?
Well, it's being realistic.
Yeah,
And I love that you talked about a calendar because I still use my calendar
me
too.
too.
And it's really looking at that calendar. And
Mhm.
at this point, you kind of have an idea that you won't get to everything. What if you did something twice a month and see how that felt? Maybe you want to add 3 times a month, but it's starting, just having a starting point with the adventure and then adding more versus
Mm.
putting everything on the calendar and
Yeah.
not getting a half of it or being overwhelmed with the, oh, I got it. Because, fun can overwhelm you too
Yeah.
because you have all these commitments for fun. Same
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
So, what if you started with a lower number? Maybe 2, maybe 3. I mean, you'd have to look at your schedule and decide that. And then just add next month. Okay, I can
Yeah.
handle another adventure this month. So that's 3. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be stressed out with your adventure.
I know. I mean, the last few years, I've literally I print year calendar and then I kind of highlight out the stuff like the courses that I've signed up for, the workshops, all the stuff, the races I'm running. And then I look at all my free weekends and I'm like, ooh, how can I fill up these weekends?
But it's also, and this is what I do, I fill it up, but then sometime during the month before, I'll go and look at what's realistic
Yeah.
here. And then I even take stuff off now.
Yeah.
What you don't want is all your time filled up with stuff.
I know. That's my error usually.
Yeah. Because relaxing, sitting with yourself, that's a part of this equation as well.
Absolutely. Hmm. Yeah, there's so much more to balance. And I know you say that people look at work-life balance as having an equal balance between the two, like a balance scale. But as you say, that concept of balance is not the best. And there's so much more to balance than just work life.
And I say it ebbs and flows
Yeah.
and it changes as we age, as our family change, as we change. It changes. It's fluid. It's dynamic.
Yeah.
It's not just one thing or the other.
Yeah.
It really isn't. And recognizing that we are of choice. I'm not saying it's an easy choice, but we are of choice. And either we'll make choices or somebody's going to make those choices for us.
Hmm.
So it's good to be as proactive about those choices as possible, knowing your foundation, knowing who you are, knowing what you need as a human being, as a woman, as a man, to be whole. It's having that inner information so that you can make choices and decisions that are in alignment with who you are or who you want to be. That healthy, whole person with a great balance in their
Hmm.
life. And like I said, it changes. It's very dynamic.
Yeah. I think that's so important that you've said that because I think it's so easy for me, like when I'm planning my year or planning my month to think, oh, well, 3 years ago, I was doing this, this, and this, but maybe that's not right for me now. Maybe I need more downtime. Maybe I need more rest. Maybe I don't need to be like going all the time. And things change.
And how do I know that? Because you know what? I have all these great things, but I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm
Yeah.
feeling tired. So let me look at my plan or my actions and see, okay, are these still in alignment? Are they even still things that I want to do? Maybe I've learned so much that I don't need to do all these things.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? I love my adventures, but let me cut down to 2 or 3 this month and see
Yeah.
how that feels. And then
Mm.
based on how that felt, because if you're not happy at the end of the day, you don't feel free and all those beautiful things that go with adventure, then that's a clue
Yeah.
that you check in with those adventures for that month and try something different the next month or tweak the next month. I'll say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's just really important to be aware, as you said, of your priorities. Because, like, for example, for the last 5 or 6 years, I've done once a month a thing that I call a workation, which is like a creative retreat that I do with myself where I go off to a hotel and I work on my books and I do writing and I do creative fun stuff. And I've always really enjoyed that. But I haven't gone on a workation for the last few months. And there's a part of me that thinks like I miss them. They would be very fulfilling if I did them. But my priority is balancing my busy life with rest right now. And so I've chosen to have kind of empty weekends over filling them with things like my workations.
And that's balance.
Yep.
That's the ebb and flow and the dynamics of work-life balance.
Mm.
So yes, I need the staycation, but now that's evolving in a different way, which is fine because I get to choose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's being willing to be flexible.
Yes.
I really like structure. And so it's like I really like to plan and get everything color coded, my calendar, and like it's all organized, but life kind of interferes with that sometimes. And so I think I'm constantly having to remind myself that I need to be flexible.
And that's me. I always say former type A, but still a little type A. But what I am now is free, flexible to change my mind.
Yeah.
And really feeling good about that. Not guilty, but good about that. Recognizing that I get to choose. And guess what? Things don't have to be in a perfect state, whatever that looks like, before I feel I deserve some type of balance or adventure or work vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would be your top tip for someone who's feeling out of balance today and they want to do one thing to start moving towards balance?
The one thing I would say in this moment, if you want to start looking at your balance, is to shut off all the noise that keeps your attention. Anything that's distracting you, shut that down for 10 minutes and really ask yourself, what would balance look like for me? Who would I be if I had balance? And just sitting with that in silence with no distractions, just for 10 minutes to see how that feels. And if you like what that feels like, you may want to spend more time with that, but just initially. But you got to shut the noise off first.
Yeah. I think that's a great tip.
The TV, the social media,
Yeah.
The chatter. I got so good with that. I started going to silent retreats. I last 4 days is what I feel I can do.
Wow.
And that is so amazing. So I went from sitting with myself. I mean, you can sit in your home, sit in a quiet room, sit outside. If there's a park, sit in the park and just sit yourself. And you'd be surprised what comes up and examine what's coming up.
Yeah. And this is something that, as you said, doesn't need to take more than 10 minutes, but it's something that I think we can benefit from doing on a regular basis.
Oh my God.
Because what was balanced for me last year is not necessarily going to be balanced for me right now.
I wholeheartedly agree. And that's the dynamics of balance. What does it look like
today?
What does it look like today? And it's very fluid.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we need to understand. Instead of it's either work or it's life, I have to make a choice. No, we don't. It's just as fluid and as free as we need it to be. And making those choices and setting those intentions and doing that work to create what that looks like for us. That's another thing. You got to create that environment. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And as you said, that involves setting boundaries. And you talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but I kind of want to touch back on it again. Setting boundaries can be really challenging for people, but like you said, it's like growing a muscle. Like it gets hard the first time, but then the more you do it, the easier it gets.
And it starts small, but it is a practice. It is a practice. And again, you have to call on courage. Because if you're not used to speaking up for yourself, if you are a people pleaser, it touches all those things.
Yeah.
It really, what's so beautiful about it is it shows you who you really are.
Yeah.
And where you need the work. That's what I love about boundaries. I can't tell you how many people, because I teach a setting healthy boundaries class in an adult enrichment program in Chicago. And every time somebody will say, man, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I didn't have any boundaries. because it's manifesting as people pleasing, it's manifesting as resentment, it's coming up in different forms.
Yeah. So Diane, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you have some fantastic, super practical tips on how to add more balance to our life. Where can people find you online and learn more about what you do?
You can find me at www.dianerandallconsults.com, and I have a free Achieve Work-Life Balance assessment for your audience. So if you look on the homepage, you can find it right there, and you get results to see where you are with your work-life balance. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. This was a really great conversation. I think it's given us some practical things that we can actually do.
Thank you, Holly. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought of this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me online and get in touch there. If you enjoyed this episode, you might want to check out these related shows. 451, which was last week, I talked with Dr. Andrea Perez about how to balance adventure and recovery. Goes along really well with this episode. 447, I talked with Jen Ruiz about how to balance travel and adventure with a full-time job. 380, I talk with Sarah K. Brandis about what to do when our passions lead to burnout. 378 is a solo episode. I talk about how to balance your hobbies when you're a multi-passionate person. And 321, another solo episode, I talk about how to balance your focus between the journey and the destination. So, again, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, could you please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts? It would mean the world to me, and it really helps other people to find the podcast. So, that's all for now. Remember to visit hollywharton.com/452 for the show notes on this episode. Happy trails to you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.